Well, hello and welcome everybody to our last Scholar Academy event of the year. I know, it's very sad, very sad. Keep posted for next semester. We've got a full lineup for next semester. So you can join the GroupMe. We always post the posters and event times and stuff in the GroupMe. We do the same on Facebook, and then we always upload, we record the events and we upload them to our YouTube channel, so you can always watch past events. But tonight we have a panel over ethical artificial intelligence. So we have, at the end there, we have Professor Hartman from the Art and Design Department. We have Dr. Stolzer from Family Science. We have Cornelius Stratman. He's an alum of UNK in philosophy and cybersecurity. Computer science, sorry. And then Trenton promotes at the end, and he's also an alum, and now he's a lecturer in cyber systems. Yep. Correct, great. Yep. Yeah. Awesome. So similar to the biology evolution panel we had a few weeks ago, we're gonna let Cornelius and Trenton start off, kind of explain what artificial intelligence is, get a foundation like that, and then we'll just go down the questions. And after that, we'll open it up to the audience for questions. So, great. Let me get rid of this. And we can just pass the mic around. So the first question is, what is artificial intelligence?
Is it alright if I give a little background about myself?
For sure.
First? Okay, cool. Hey all, Trenton here. To give a little background of myself, I'm a UK alumnus of both the Cyber Systems and Mathematics departments. Currently I am pursuing a master's in cybersecurity with a concentration in cyber operations at UNO. Other background experience in my field includes 2 years as a cybersecurity engineer for Nebraska Medicine and, like Will mentioned, lecturing in the spring of 2024, the artificial intelligence course at UNK. A little fun fact, if you end up Googling me after this presentation, the first result is currently my GitHub profile. I'm here before this panel just as a humble representative for cyber systems. Yeah. So, what do you want me to do? What is artificial intelligence, or should we do introductions?
We can do introductions real quick, and then
sweet.
I mean, I have nothing to add to my introduction that Will didn't already say. I just an alumni from here with philosophy and computer science. So.
I don't like microphones. Can you hear me? I'm Dr. Stolzer, and I'm the farthest thing in the world from any kind of computer or any other kind of high-tech expert. What I am an expert in is child development and adolescent, infant, child, and adolescent. That's my PhD, that's been my research for 30 years. And that's why I was asked to be on this panel, not for my expertise in this area. We've got enough of that up here. Mine is how it affects developmental processes.
I'm Mark Harvin. I teach in the art department, graphic design, animation, and so on. And I also run the illustration program. And I started integrating AI studies into illustration about 4 semesters ago. The reason initially was because our students in art were scared to death of it, and some of them were even leaving illustration and graphic design majors because they felt like there was no future in it. And so I thought the idea that we should just sort of tackle it head on and figure out how it could be a useful tool and so on would be of value. And so I've been working on that for 4 semesters, and that kind of gets you into a lot of the ethical things. And in our field, in our discipline, and the other arts, it's already had some pretty profound impacts.
All right. So now that we got introductions out of the way, the first question, which is meant for either Cornelius or me. Cornelius and I discussed, I'll be answering it. So, what is artificial intelligence? I don't know. I had a little reference diagram here from my from what I learned about artificial intelligence as an undergraduate here at UNK. But in essence, well, artificial intelligence, when taking the 2 words separately, leaves a lot of room for high amounts of interpretation. I think for the purposes of this panel, I want to base the definition of AI on what I learned as an undergraduate here at UNC. Specifically, AI is the branch of computer science that is concerned with the automation of intelligence, or alternatively, the automation of acting rationally. So the branch of computer science that is concerned with the automation of acting rationally. As we continue our discussion, I want us to be specific about the AI technology that we discuss. Let's see, do I have anything else written on this? Okay, no, and that's the end of that question. Okay. Am I supposed to start question 2 as well?
I can announce it. So question 2 and 3 kind of go together, but we'd like to know, how is artificial intelligence being used in your respective fields? And part of that is that according to you, do you think that's helping or hurting the advancement or progression of your field of study?
Okay, yeah. I'll start again. So my fields of study nowadays, in general, are computer science and cybersecurity. The computer scientists and the software engineers are what I consider the quote-unquote OG researchers and builders of AI technology. Cybersecurity professionals with the adjacency to computer scientists or early adopters of various AI-based technology. One thing that I have geeked out before is machine learning algorithms and email security. Most people, if they view the admin dashboards, might be shocked to see the sheer amount of junk and malicious mail that gets blocked and or discarded. If you like a clean inbox, be thankful for email security. The trendier topics of AI technology in my little sphere seems to be large language models, LLMs, as well as automated code generation. In general, these discussions with peers tend to revolve more on the philosophical side about how we use, view, and discuss AI technology. Then continuing on, AI technology is just that, technology. And technology is a tool. With that assertion out of the way, the rest is more so my evolving opinions. I think with any R&D, there are some potentially helpful and hurtful ramifications. In popular discussion, generally the helpful ramifications are discussed. I'll go against the grain and mention the hurtful ramifications of AI technology. For me, the main hurtful ramification of AI technology is primarily that at times AI technology can seemingly overshadow other important areas of research and R&D that is needed across the entire technological ecosystem. And then, yeah, that's the end of question 2 and 3 for me.
Right. So it's worth mentioning, I'll be answering these questions from the standpoint of the philosophy viewpoint. So I did some research on how AI is being used in philosophy, and I haven't been able to find too much. It's not being used, at least to like innovate or anything like that. It's not out there writing any new books. In fact, you don't have to use AI at all in philosophy, but you can. And I could think of 3 ways you could use it. The first way is you could use it to help you find writings of philosophers who have written on a specific topic, or new topics entirely. The second way is you can have it summarize a philosophy book for you. And finally, is you can have it write a philosophy paper for you. And should I do question 3 as well? Sure. All right. The only one of these that would be helpful that I thought of would be if you used it to point you to new philosophers and books. This could introduce you to new ideas that you could fall in love with, as well as new philosophers you could also fall in love with. The next 2 uses fare much differently. You could use an AI to summarize a philosophy book instead of reading it yourself, but in no way is this helpful. This is abundantly clear in the case of any of Plato's dialogues. The AI could summarize the topics that we discussed and the conclusions that the people in the dialogues come to. But this is not the main part, or the most important part of Plato's books. Plato is also trying to show the reader something about themselves throughout the motion of the dialogues. And if you use an AI to summarize one of his books, you are going to end up missing this entirely. You are also assuming that the AI is not leaving out any key details and is accurately summarizing the book. And speaking from experience, sometimes AI gives answers that are way off. With how intricate Plato's dialogues are, it would be very easy for the AI to do this and miss a key detail. It is also detrimental to use AI to write a philosophy paper for you. An important thing about philosophy is that it forms your soul and teaches you how to think. Writing papers plays a crucial part in this. They involve thinking through problems, reading and rereading books, and spending many hours in thought playing around with a bunch of different ideas. There's a skill here that one must practice in order to develop. And if you use AI to write a philosophy paper for you, you will never get better at this skill, nor will you learn how to think or develop your soul. So for the most part, I would say AI is not useful in philosophy.
I think you hit on something so critically important. AI, what it's trying to do is mimic the human brain. That's what it's trying to do. But what it lacks is heart and soul, and that is what makes us unique. And it will never be able to do that, ever, ever, ever. Because we possess a soul and we possess our heart, and it cannot mimic that. So I'm so old that when I've read a book over and over again, I learn something new every single time I read it. Some little nuance or something that applies to my life, and that can never touch this. And I am probably the heretic on this panel because I've also published a very, very important meta-analysis on the effects of screens. So it's not like I'm coming into this green. Screens are affecting us in every single way, and we have to start acknowledging that. They're affecting us socially, they're affecting us psychologically, they're affecting us hormonally and neurologically. They affect how we learn and how we think. They're taking away imagination and creativity. They're even hurting our eyes. If trends continue as they are right now, we're going to see 10 and 12-year-olds, about 90% of them wearing glasses because it's hurting our eyes. This is not our natural environment. Some of my students are in here, and they know, they've heard this 1,000 times. This is not our natural environment to be on a screen. Don't hate me.
No, I mean, I'm listening to what you're saying, and I'm thinking through.
Think through it.
Yeah. All right.
So philosophically, I have some real problems with this. I do, and I understand that we need to go the way of the future. I get that. But in doing so, the only thing I'm going to keep saying, I'm going to say it till I die, is that we can't forget that we're triadic beings. We're body, mind, spirit, and no AI will ever generate that.
That makes me think, the question, I'm thinking about the question, how is AI being used in your respective field? And that just prompted me to think, well, I guess I'm in two respective fields, because on one side in graphic design and art and so on and so forth, but on the other side is teaching. And we certainly, a lot of times when you're dealing with curriculum and things with students, the whole idea is to get students to think and to get students to experience things and react to them. So, in that way, when I think about that respective field, I would be a little apprehensive about whether AI is going to, don't let it think for you kind of thing. I think it's like in drawing class, when you teach a drawing class, the pain, we have every little detail of it planned out to make it as difficult as possible, of course, and I'm just kidding, but it feels like that to students, I think. But it's all there to build patience, to build observation skills and so on. So, but in the field of the arts, and I wish we had a music and theater person here. I know music is, well, it's affecting them on an economical level, like it's affecting us. But how's it being used? Well, we generate creative content for mass media. And that includes like illustration images, photographic images, animation, video, and of course, it's doing that, and it's doing it very fast, and it's doing it very efficiently. We're still, I would say, in our area, in the visual art, we're still thankful that it hasn't learned faster than it has, because it's hard enough to keep up with it already, and it's producing some pretty amazing images and things, and that'll be an interesting thing. We talk about the future, where we think it's going to go, but it can also be an incredible tool. It generates 3D models for 3D printing, and also fixes or repairs those models. It's helping us do that. Anybody who uses Photoshop or Adobe Illustrator knows that there's now an AI component. Like, used to be, when I was in graphic design, if you took a picture of a person and the picture was supposed to be taller than your camera aspect ratio and their legs got cut off, you had to go in there and you had to sort of fudge the legs, maybe put in another photograph. And now we just have, it's just a click, 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 and AI does it. And look, those are perfect. They match the genes just right. And so in some ways, it's really useful on a professional level, and it makes things quicker. An area that I don't think it's being realized the way it should, though, is in conceptual development. We have a lot of students who say, you know, if I could do what I wanted, I'd want to be a concept artist for the movie industry or the gaming industry. And they're the ones I probably feel the most apprehensive about, because AI concepts quickly, image generation software like DALL-E generates concepts quickly, lighting scenarios quickly, and so on and so forth. So, but I anticipate, as human beings adapt, that the art people will adapt. And I don't know how many have read Dune here, but you've got the mentats with their big eyebrows, and they work with the computers. They're almost like part of the machine. I kind of envision some of our students in the future being like that. There'll be these kind of mentat types that'll be talking to the machine faster than any normal human being and getting it to do what they want it to do. I don't know if that is good or bad, but right now they're scared to death of the concept development of AI because it takes a human being a little bit longer to do that. So we'll talk more about that later. And that relates to the advancement in the field. I think it's both helping and hurting us. It's helping us in a way, professionally, in a way that it's a tool for creatives that allows us to see kind of quickly envision things and then go from there. And that's never hurtful because it takes time to sketch in a sketchbook, or even with Procreate on a tablet, it takes time. And sometimes your ideas get lost. Of course, they can get lost too if the AI is not giving you what you want. And you know, if they don't know how to write prompts well, that can be an issue. But so I say it's both. And what I wrote down here was both helpful as a tool for creative professionals, but potential negative impacts as opportunities in creative fields, such as concept art, illustration, graphic design. That's already happening because that's in graphic design for mass media, art for mass media. Not so much in art, because one thing about the art world is authenticity rules everything. You know, if you say you have a Jackson Pollock painting, it's worth $50 million if it is a Jackson Pollock painting. If it's not done by Jackson Pollock, it's worth nothing. It's like grandma's antiques. AI cannot produce an ancient Greek vase. It doesn't. No one's ever going to be able to do that. To have the context of having been buried near the Parthenon and then dug up, that's not going to happen. So the arts where people paint and stuff, it's not quite as effective there. It hasn't had as much of an impact. But here's another thing I was thinking about, though, that I tell my students to encourage them is like, new occupations are going to emerge. And we don't even know what they are, probably. I mean, they probably have a better idea than I do, but they'll have these new occupations and they'll provide new professional opportunities like all technology does. We'll see what it does to people with, that spend 15 years of their life and the proverbial 10,000 hours developing skills of seeing and recording with colored pencils or whatever, when the machine can make a like image that happens in, 5 images in 2 minutes, and you pick the one you want. We all kind of are apprehensive about that, but that's it. That's probably more than enough. Both questions answered. Bing, bing.
And I didn't answer part of mine, so it's so important to have different perspectives, and I'm so glad you brought up the art world, because I'm not artsy at all. But I'm wondering, can AI, so you guys can probably answer this, how can you tell the difference between a Van Gogh? And can it do it?
Well, not right now. I mean, there's a lot of issues there. Like Van Goghs, they're all accounted for pretty much, unless someone finds one in their attic. So, but it can't push paint. I've watched a lot of robotics. There was even a group in Omaha, Lincoln, they did a thing called the Van Gogh bot, and they were trying to get it to where it could paint with brushes and things. But is it going to get there? you know people, they're good at developing technologies and making them work, so maybe someday. There is a robot named Ada. Look it up, AI-DA. I love and hate this thing, but it's in the guise of a woman, but it has these weird mechanical arms, and she, I'm gonna say she, what are pronouns for robots? I don't know, okay? But Ada supposedly does artworks. And there's a TEDx talk with Ada up there talking to the audience. And I mean, she's almost trying to talk them into thinking her work's as valid as like human expression. And I'm kind of thinking, who's behind Ada? I mean, somebody somewhere is telling Ada to say this stuff, but I don't know, anyway.
The reason I asked the question is this. I don't know anything about art, but I know about my field, and I've won $40 with this because everybody's always betting me that I can't tell the difference between an AI-generated paper and a human-written paper, and I win every single time. So my question was with art, because I don't much understand it, but I do understand when you get this old and it published as many papers as I published, you know when a human wrote that.
Oh, yeah.
And you know, I can't tell you, and I wish I could verbatim, tell you exactly what I'm looking for, but I really don't even know. I just know I know it. And again, I think it's stemming from the heart and the soul. That's what I think.
For me too, you know, if you've got a student that talks using 1 cent words and their papers have a bunch of 25% or 25-cent words in them, then there's probably a chance there was some help in there. So if they're, you know, it's like, that's
well, even with
thing.
people with great big letters behind their names, you know,
Yeah.
they're pretty proud of those big letters.
Yeah.
I can still tell.
Awesome. Okay, so we might have started to touch on this one, and I know Professor Hartman, you mentioned prompts, writing prompts, and I'm sure Trenton, you can talk to this too. But how much control do humans have over AI?
Yeah, so I'll start. Again, I want to remind people the computer science perspective and definition of artificial intelligence is, like I mentioned, the branch of computer science that is concerned with the automation of acting rationally. So it is not, and I repeat, it is not the branch of computer science that is concerned about the automation of acting humanly. There is a key difference there, I think, and as we discuss artificial intelligence technology, we kind of have to remember that core definition from the computer science world. And sorry, with that little spiel out of the way, let me come back to what I wrote down for question number 4. Again, with the assertion that AI technology is a tool, I do believe that with any tool, we are the ones in control. I do believe in viewing technology through a human-centric / programmer-centric perspective. As such, I think we have more control over AI technology as general individuals and as a community of programmers than we might typically give ourselves credit for.
I don't think I have anything to add to that.
What I'm going to add is, I'm going to quote Einstein, and he said that imagination is more important than knowledge. And what we are losing is our creativity and our imagination. And once we're giving this to our children, that's when you start speaking to my heart, because that's my love, is our children. And I spoke about the screen paper that I published and talked about how it affects us neurologically, hormonally, socially, psychologically, in every way. And my tax dollars, I'm a researcher in this area, and they're taking my tax dollars to put more screens in front of our children. And I have a problem with that, a very, 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 very big problem. I want to be fostering creativity. I want to be fostering imagination, critical thinking. What do we call it in my class, people? We do brain Pilates in my class. That critical thinking, think for yourself. You don't have to think like everybody else. Get out of that box. That's what's so critical, and that's our humanness, and that's my fear.
I don't know enough about it to really judge. You know, you watch movies like Colossus, the Forbin Project from the 70s, where the computer basically kind of takes over the world and develops its own consciousness, and there's a lot of science fiction there that, you know, that would make people apprehensive. But I think I would agree with my experience that of it so far that obviously humans have control of it. It works for us. It's kind of weird though, you know, we think computers work for us too though, don't we? And they're supposed to make things so much easier, but as much time as I spend with my computer trying to get it to do what I want it to do, sometimes I wonder who's in charge. So that part of it's always going to be back there. Dennis Miller, the comedian, said, he was talking about global warming and climate change, and he said, yeah, like the A-team that is the human race is going to solve this problem. And I thought it was funny at first, and then it wasn't that funny, because I was thinking, if we look at the history of how we've dealt with technologies as a race, there have been some pretty big bumps, and things have come at a cost, and I suspect this will be the same way, that there's going to be a cost down the road. I know that right now we're in love with it, as some people are, and it's very much the thing now, and people are all excited and they want to see it continue to develop and all those kinds of things. But sometimes we do that at our own peril, because we push forward with something and then it, you know, forget to kind of maybe hold back a little bit. I know right now, for instance, this isn't directly related to AI, but when you think about probability computing, like quantum qubits and p-bits and thermodynamic computers that aren't like yes-no type machines, NATO right now is trying to produce legislation to sort of harness the development of quantum computing, because what their concern is, and also thermodynamic computing, like what's going on in Santa Clara, California, they're trying to slow down a little bit because they're worried about how how effective it will be on encryptions and things of that nature. And that gets way beyond my area of expertise. But it is interesting when you start to see people that are, you know, they're pretty prominent in their fields, and they're saying, well, look, this is something I'm concerned about. Somebody that's a computer scientist or a hardware developer, you know, who's working on a machine that they cool for 1 minute, so, you know, to nearly 0 degrees Kelvin, so that it can process for 1 minute, and in that 1 minute it just produces an amazing amount of work. I think, but I also think because we don't know much about it, that we're kind of, you know, I fear technologies I don't know a lot about, but it's not so much that with this. I'm more kind of just going, what is this and how is it going to end up? And I'm sort of fascinated with it. But I hope we don't do, you know, like cloning. Nobody in a rational way wanted to see, you know, people go out and try to clone human beings or even primates, right? But you know how scientists can be. We all do. First of all, they think inductively, and we can talk about that another day, but it's like induction is basically this, you know, you're falling from a tall building and somebody jumps off the building and you're at the 52nd floor and you talk through to the window, how's it going? Oh, it's going great right now. You know, that's kind of the way I think about scientists a lot of times is, you know, we're doing great right now. We got this thing under control, and at the same time, they're at the 52nd floor falling down to the ground. And I studied physics as an undergraduate, so I kind of have a little bit of a sense of that. And Dr. Rosenman and I have talked a lot about it too, about scientific mentalities and dispositions. And there is a race, and one of the things is that we have to think about is there's an adversarial race going on in all the sciences to publish papers, to get grants, to get money. So, you know, where's ethics fit into that? You know, if I can get there first, you know, that's a big deal. I can make some money, maybe write a book, and so that kind of stuff makes more apprehensive than anything. And that's back to the control thing is, I think we have control of it now. My question is, will we maintain control in ways right now that we don't even know we could lose control? I'm not thinking about a cognitive AI system that takes over all the missiles in the world and is going to threaten to launch them. I'm talking about economic impacts and exactly the same thing you're saying. What's going to happen to children whose best friend is like a chat type device that tells them what they want to hear all the time, and you know, that kind of thing. That's concerning. So it's probably more than I needed to say. Anyway.
And I heard you say something about fear. And I do have some fear about this because I've watched humans with their screens. I lived across the street from a great big park, and I've lived in that old Victorian house for about 23 years. And it used to be when parents would take their children to the park, they would interact with their children, and now I watch this. and I wanna scream at the top of my lungs. What is so important that you are looking at? Your little boy is right there climbing on this jungle gym. You'll never get this time back again, ever. So I do have some fears. I've watched what these things have done to us, so I am a little fearful about what all of this is gonna result in. And like I said, I'm the heretic on the panel, so I'm always gonna be thinking like this.
Well, it could affect socialization, you know.
It's affecting it right now.
Because if you're
right
talking
down
to
the
something
line.
that doesn't, you know, isn't human.
Yeah.
It's in Blade Runner, the new Blade Runner, you know, he's got his girlfriend, you know. And of course, it's Anna Arcus, so it's not too bad a girlfriend to have, you know.
That's debatable.
I told my wife, I said, gosh, can I trade you in on that? And yeah, I'm still paying for it.
Yeah.
Okay, so, yeah.
Oh, yeah, sorry, I can read question 5. So do humans have a responsibility or ownership for what AI does?
So, from the computer science perspective, yes, humans absolutely have responsibility and ownership over AI technology. Where the delineation of ownership and responsibility lies is and will be a hotly debated subject. I prefer to think on a more individual basis. Something that was discussed in my secure web development course that I'm taking this semester is that LLMs and code generation can be useful tools for some people to learn deeper intricacies about things, but you should always be skeptical and cross-check what these models generate for you. Additionally, with code generation, it was recommended that you use it more so to help with low-hanging fruit that you feel comfortable with as the primary developer to cross-check for errors and vulnerabilities. It was also recommended that if you do use LLMs and code generation tooling, be honest that you used it and attribute co-authorship to the sections in which it was used to limit your liability.
Okay. I'm gonna assume that there's some moral weight in the action that's being performed or that's being tasked with the AI. But to answer this question, I think it would be helpful to look at what Aristotle says in his book on ethics. In this book, he distinguishes between 2 different types of actions, those that are voluntary and those that are involuntary. A voluntary action is one in which the initiative lies within the agent who has a knowledge of who or what will be affected and how it will be affected by the action. An involuntary action is one which is done under constraint, someone may be forcing you physically to do something, or one that is done due to ignorance. The person performing the action may not know what the result of the action will be. Someone is only responsible for their voluntary actions and not their involuntary ones. So I have a hypothetical scenario to set up. Because an involuntary action due to ignorance can easily apply in the case of AI. For example, if someone in the military launches an AI-controlled drone to attack a military base, but the drone ends up attacking something else like a town, this would be an example of an involuntary action due to ignorance. The person who launched the drones did not know that they would attack the town and commanded to attack the military base. So in general, I would say that a person is responsible for AI insofar as it produces the intended result, or the end that it has been commanded towards.
Do we have a responsibility or ownership for what AI does? I could go so many different ways with this, but I don't think we even have the slightest idea. That's my answer. I really don't. I think it's so new and we're chipping the tip of the iceberg right now. We really don't have any idea what my grandson will know. He's a year old. And I worry about it. I do. That's my answer.
Yeah, I was reading this question, I was thinking, what humans? So if AI, the descendants of AI technology end up being problematic in one way or another long after the humans who did the original groundwork are dead, then you can't really hold them responsible. You can curse their name, I guess, but I think we have authority over it, and if we have authority over it, there's a certain responsibility there. But I don't really feel very qualified to say more than that about related to that question. I don't right now. You know, I don't make the software, so no, I don't know.
I think I'm gonna say this too, because I always tell my students this, when we have something brand new for children, we're not gonna know the effects for 30 or 40 years. We don't have the data to support, you know, we can offer conjecture, we can offer hypotheses, we can offer theories, we can offer opinions, but the fact is we don't know what this is gonna do until it's already done. And that's the truth.
So question 6, where do you see AI going in the future in your field?
Yeah, so again, from the computer science perspective, I think there's enough substance and financial backings for LLMs that it wouldn't surprise me that researchers and developers would still be improving the technology a decade or more in the future. With that being said, the world of cyber systems is constantly evolving, and there might be a new technology that grips people's attention. In the meantime, I think there will be further developments and frameworks on the cybersecurity side of things related to how we govern, audit, and assure the digital safety of the AI technology that is implemented in our specific technical environments. In closing this question, I also want to remind people that AI technology is built upon other technological stacks that sometimes get forgotten. Although AI technology is the proverbial shiny new toy, if you don't enjoy researching and developing with AI technology, that is perfectly all right. The array of technology is vast, and each subset has its own unique opportunities and challenges.
What I will say is, I guess, regardless of how advanced AI becomes in the future, in philosophy, the same pitfalls will still exist. If you rely on it to summarize books or write your philosophy papers for you, you're probably missing out on one of the most important things philosophy has to offer.
And in my field, my concern has always been children. And I'm a passionate child advocate for, oh my God, over 40 years. How'd I get this old? I'm just so worried about nature deprivation. We're already experiencing this in every facet of our lives. Our kids are indoors all the time, and it's resulting in so many different problems, not just emotionally and psychologically and socially, but look at our obesity rates, look at our anxiety and depression and ADHD and conduct disorder and oppositional defiant and autism spectrum. I'm so old that those things didn't even exist. Now, wait a minute. Was there kids that, didn't pay any attention and were messing? You're looking at one. We just weren't labeled with all those things. And our parents would say to us, go outside and play. And in my house, you better not say you're bored, because my mom would say, then get up here and help me put up these cucumbers. So you just ran outside. And so that's my fear, is it's just one more thing that's gonna keep us from our humanness, from our heart, from our soul, from our bioevolutionary heritage, which is the outdoors. And that's where I see this going. And that may sound like I'm the naysayer, and I think I am. And they might call me a prophet in 40 years, you never know.
That's what it'll be. I don't know, I was thinking a lot about this. I love these kinds of questions. Let's imagine we see AIs generating some pretty decent videos now. It's getting better all the time. And gosh, just a month, it seems like it improves it month by month. And so I was thinking, I wonder if there'll be a day when you can just kind of say, look, I want a movie that's set here and does this, and then it'll just do in real time conjure it up. And I can see that happening in the arts and with music. You can say, hey, I like Boston, but I also like Chuck Mangione. Can I have a song that would be a synthesis of those two? Real time, plays it for you. So we're not storing music, we're not storing movies as much, but it's generating in real time these kinds of things. That to me, am I excited about that? I don't know that I'm excited about that. I like interesting things, you know. I like to learn new things. I like interesting things. The idea of machine-human collaboration. Every time I sit there with my keyboard and my mouse, I think, God, this hasn't changed much in a very long time. So I wonder what the next thing's going to be with this kind of an interface. And you know, we'll probably build neural plugins all over the place or something. I don't know. It probably won't be me because I don't want a bunch of plugins sewn into my skin. You know, if it's a sci-fi thing, but. I wonder about human-machine collaboration as far as the arts goes. Like, I would like to have a studio assistant or two, and if they're robots, I don't care. And if they're controlled by some sort of AI algorithm, that's fine with me as long as it doesn't make a lot of mistakes. And I would anticipate it probably won't make as many mistakes as I do, so that'd be a good thing. But do I want to be a studio assistant to an AI creative? I'm not sure how that would work, you know. Is that possible? I don't know. Here's what I was thinking about today was, imagine an emergence of new art forms. Okay, we've got a lot, come on, you know, in 1910 we didn't have movies, right? We talk about how different, you know, like, oh, they painted really well and sculpted really well in the Renaissance. Well, yeah, they didn't have movies and they didn't record music, you know, that's what they did. What do we do well now? Well, we make movies well. At least we did for a while there. I don't know about now. And we make a lot of music and that kind of thing. But I was thinking, imagine like a digital subculture within the arts with human followers, and I don't know about cognitive digital followers, but let's just say human followers, and it's all AI generated. In other words, they know it's AI generated, but they're in love with it, and that's the art form that they prefer. And so the posters they collect are created by AI. I can see that happening. Is that a good thing? I didn't say it was a good thing. I'm just like, don't kill a messenger. But I do think about that because art is cultural, and so you get these generated artworks by these things, and people will say, well, that's cool. Well, right now, if it's a certain AI generated image on a certain platform and printed by a certain printer, it does have real value in an economic venue. I mean, you can buy things that are made by certain my son works for Apple Computer in Austin, and they actually have a setup, and they work in conjunction with China, and they make these images, and if you buy one of those, because they're quote unquote limited edition, they're only going to make so many of them, then they're going to stop, they cost a lot of money. So it does have an economic impact, and I think it's going to continue to have that impact in the future. And then, but I don't see it as all bad. I think the limits of AI, as far as like its ability to generate images and to make good music and all that, is going to be limited by economic demands. The development's going to follow the money, and as long as there might be some potential money in there, or we're infatuated with technology, it'll keep going. But there will be a point when it's like, that's not worth our time to go in that direction. But the last thing that I think is something that's related more to what you're saying is, I do not see anything that and of course this is my comprehension in 2024, which is limited. When I think about sociocultural context, human things, our infatuation with handmade things, with things that have historical significance or cultural connections, I know within humanity, I don't see AI being able to do anything but make facsimiles of those things, okay? Because the fact is, like I said before, it can't make an ancient Greek vase, neither can you or I, because they were already made in ancient Greece, and we just have the artifacts. So there are a lot of limits there that I think will have an effect, and there will be an effect on the arts. One last thing I'd say is this. I was looking up stuff for this talk, and I was looking up Michael Smith. Has anybody seen the YouTube video of Michael Smith, what he did with Spotify? Because this relates to music. And this is how it could directly have an economic impact on artisans and people like that. Okay, he generated tens of thousands of fake accounts on Spotify and other streaming services. Then he used completely AI-generated songs by the thousands that he uploaded to those, and the AI generated the music and the titles and the artist names. The titles were really interesting. It was like, what was one? Social Salad or something. I was like, damn, I'm gonna use that on one of my paintings. So anyway, it generated all these things, and then he used AI to help him an AI algorithm to help him upload and stream literally millions of songs to these services. And he made $10 million over a number of years by doing that. So it did have an impact on, like, I've got a friend that makes music and uploads it a lot slower than a computer does. But the interesting thing is, guess what? Now he's being charged with wire fraud and money laundering, so he's probably gonna go to prison.
Yeah.
So he should probably quit at $5 million and took his money and went home. But those kind of stories I find really interesting too, because we already see them playing out.
Awesome. Well, now we'll open it up to questions from the audience if anybody has one. I can start it off. I have a question. So I have Snapchat, and I remember, I don't know, a year ago, a couple of years ago, they got the AI bot thing now, and it's the top thing on your list of contacts, and it always tries to get you to talk to it. Like, you can start a conversation, you can ask it questions like you can in Google, stuff like that. So, which is just, to me, is terrifying. But like, I don't know, what is the impact that this is going to have in 10 years when we have a whole generation growing up talking to this? So you're not even using social media to talk to or to socialize with a real person. Now you're just using it to talk to this thing. What is the impact you see with this?
I'd be interested to hear your perspective.
I was gonna say, this is more, seems like more of your field. But it seems like we'll just lose the connection with people even more than social media already has caused for us. Cause I mean, like, how many Facebook friends do you have, or how many friends do you have on Snapchat that you actually see in person? And I think that trying to develop friendships with people is hard enough, even if you have just a few. But if you have more and more, it's going to be even harder. And now if you're trying to form friendships with AI, I don't see where that could lead, how that could lead you anywhere really.
I think the question is, what is a friendship? What does that mean? What does that mean? And I hate to keep harping on our heart and soul, but that's what makes us who we are. And as we're growing, we don't learn how to socialize from a book or going to a class. We learn to socialize with being with one another. And we're with all kinds of people. We're with the elders, we're with the very young, we're with the developmentally limited, we're with everybody, and that's how we learn. And we keep getting better and better and better at it. And I've been a professor for a long time, and I've seen over the last 25 years a change in how people relate to each other. My students will tell you this: when I walk in the class and it's dead silent and everybody is on a machine, what do I say? Let's talk to each other. We gotta talk to each other. These relationships, has anybody in here ever been in love? I have too. What is love? That's a question for the philosophers. But I know a little bit about it, and it doesn't exist in AI. It exists in us. It exists in us and other mammals. They can love too, but we don't get it from artificial things. We don't. We think we do, but we don't. And there's so many things I could say. I'll just keep going on myself. That's not about that.
That might, John, that might end up somewhat Platonic too, because it's a mimesis, in not necessarily in a positive way. It's a copy or a facsimile, what, like this voice talking to us through the computer and all those kinds of things. I think there's, I've been thinking about twice removed from the truth. I mean, I wonder how it would apply in that way.
Yeah, I think that's along the lines of the question that I have, because you gave the definition of AI, artificial intelligence, as automation of acting rationally. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah, and I was, my first thought was, when you think of contexts in which you would use the word acting, that person's acting, this is an instance of acting, that's not something that even could be automated. instances where you would say to somebody, hey, be rational, or giving an example of rationality, that too would be one of the things that I would question whether it could be sensibly attributed to an automated system. Which may sound just like, you might wanna say, oh, it's just semantics, but I think the words that we use are fairly important. And so my question there would be of whether you can talk about it as a copy. Because one of the things that you don't get from, or it sounds like it might be a copy. You've got this bot that you have a relationship with, right? And like you're saying, Dr. Stolzer, you can't get love from it. But I think maybe an important other point is that you can't give it to the automated system. Like I can't be responsible to that system in a way that me being responsible to my wife or my kid is a demonstration of my love for them. Like if I'm late picking up my kid, I'm failing in loving them in certain ways. If I'm late getting to the computer, that's just not a big deal. So it doesn't require anything of me in the way that relationships of love do. So my question, sorry I'm rambling, but
No.
my question is whether it makes sense to even talk about it as a copy. And if you use the definitions of action that Cornelius gave from Aristotle, those aren't things that you can sensibly attribute to an automated system.
Well, we can't even define some things. Somebody define love for me.
Well, before we continue, I did want to, I thought of something for your question specifically from the computer science perspective. So, what I've noticed a lot is a lot of researchers out there, you know, when they're, because large language models is such like a fab, and like popular science nowadays. We see a lot of researchers just throwing pasta at the wall and seeing what sticks. And I mean, with how you described that Snapchat LLM that does this, that, and the other. I don't think that's a good use of AI technology. And I mean, I echo kind of what the other people here have said about finding friends and whatnot and all that jazz. But yeah, from the computer science perspective, researchers just, especially in popular science, just seem to throw things at the wall and see what sticks and what doesn't stick. And there's going to be some good stuff and there's going to be some bad stuff out there. Yeah.
There it is again. What is a friend? What is love? What is joy? What is hope? What is faith? We can't even, what's normal? I ask my students this all the time. Tell me, I'm gonna write it down, you guys are brilliant. Tell me what normal is. I go to the board and I start with, if you can't define normal, how in the hell can you define abnormal? It's an interesting place we're at, so we wanna replicate all this stuff. I loved how you talked about that. We can't even define what it is.
So yeah, just to kind of, it might answer your question a little bit, it might not. Just in terms of what the computer science side of things considers as acting rationally, like in the AI course that I teach, one of the big subjects, like when you're learning as a computer scientist, it is the idea of like agents, and so like, and what do you think of agents as? Like, okay, you got a robot, it has sensors, okay, so it senses its environment, and then depending on its environment, it chooses what the best action would be. And that's kind of what the computer scientist would say acting rationally is. That right now that's what I would say. Yeah.
How is best determined, what's the criteria for that?
Again, with the remembrance that AI technology is a tool, and the tool is built by a person, it's all down to how that person codes
Right.
that specific technology and what the developer considers acting rationally is.
Yeah, and I think that's really helpful, because my concern is that, there's the possibility of reducing what rationality or acting is when we're talking about a human being to what we mean when we're talking about it in relation to this bot or this robot, or this operating system, sorry.
Yeah, an agent. Yeah, it's
Right,
like
right.
that. Like one of the first things that we talk about in like the intro to AI courses, like the agent-based approach of thinking. I mean, that's one of the first ideas and ideations about the branch of computer science that has evolved into artificial intelligence. And I mean, that agent-based approach, I want to say, has been around since like the 80s or 70s even. The idea of AI and the definition of AI in computer science, it's been around for a long time, or for computer science and cyber systems. Yeah, that's considered a long time, because I mean, it's so new and whatnot. But yeah, I mean, what we're seeing is now, like, with the popularity of LLMs, we're seeing like the broader population talking about it and discussing it more, which I find it is nice, and it is neat, because it sheds a light on computer science and people thinking about going into the computer science field.
I have a question.
Yep.
This is, I don't know who this is really more towards Cornelius, I think. Stolzer, you mentioned that artificial intelligence is taking away our, not mentioned, this is this is what you believe, is taking away our creativity and doesn't allow us at least as much room to think for ourselves. Of course, I mean, using ChatGPT or anything like that, you have to give an idea, a very bare bone idea, for anything to come out of it. And Cornelius, you said that AI doesn't allow us to shape our souls, especially as it's related to philosophy and writing a philosophy paper. And so, Cornelius, in light of your shirt, with the allegory of the cave in mind, does AI belong in the cave or out of the cave, or what would you say? Because you have this idea of you have to put something in there, but ultimately, is AI throwing a shadow on the wall for you? Or, and then with that in mind, is it ethical to give AI so generally out to people? Like, I can Google ChatGPT and come up with something right now. Is that ethical for it to be so accessible to people?
I guess in answer to your first part of the question about being in the cave, I think it could throw shadows on the wall. It's going to depend on how you use it, because like Trenton said, it's a tool. But it seems like at least the way we're using it now, it's a tool that can very easily be misused. So I'd say that it's very easy for it to keep you down in the cave and not help you get out of it. Because like what gets you out of it is reading books like Plato's Republic or any of the other books we've read in class. And if you just use the AI to summarize those books to skate by in class and hopefully the professors will be able to detect this, that you're writing your papers with an AI. But if they don't, you'll get your grade, but you wouldn't have actually learned anything or developed at all.
Yeah. I'm going to interject there, because you do bring up an interesting thing about detecting AI influences in grading papers and whatnot. I've heard stories and also like in my sphere of peers just talking about how like AI checkers, they're always going to be in the reactive, so it's always going to be a cat and mouse game. So by the time that the AI checkers figure out how to determine like if something was created by a certain large language model or code generation tool, there will more likely than not be a new model that came out that people are using. Yeah. Additionally, just a funny aside there. Yeah, and with that, I've heard stories in which like some AI checkers go through a paper and don't detect anything, and like in the middle of the paper, there's a blatant statement that said, "This is created by a large language model," and yeah, that's just a little funny aside, I guess. Yeah.
I have a question for Professor Hartman. You kind of mentioned that there might be some benefits to AI in the art world, but I really can't see what they would be. I mean, you mentioned there might be new jobs that AI could create for people, but isn't it taking away other jobs from people? And another thing is, as far as my understanding of what art is created by human beings. So whatever AI creates is not art, because only art can be created by human beings. And kind of along the lines of what we talked about, doesn't AI, especially artists using AI, doesn't it deprive them of using their own imagination? And you mentioned that it might speed up a process, like it takes a long time to sketch out something, but isn't there value in taking the time to do such a thing? I mean, if all these artists turn to AI, and suddenly what if AI got taken away? Do we even have artists anymore not skilled in rudimentary art? So is it truly beneficial? Can AI, what do you say about, can AI actually create art?
Well, first of all, I'm not a super advocate of AI being applied to the arts. I'm 63 years old, and I like to work with my hands. You can't replace that. People who want to, who want to make furniture, for instance, they're going to do that. They like the feel of the plane on the wood. AI's not going to do much good. But for drafting and planning, I think there's some possibilities there that could be like a studio assistant. Would you want to make your own movie by yourself? If you could? You could choose all the characters, you could write the story. I mean, I know people that would love to have that power because they know it takes 400 people, sometimes 4,000, to create a motion picture, and they want to make one by themselves with their own vision. I think for that person, it could be beneficial if it reaches that point to where, and I think if it keeps going the way it is, who knows what it'll be able to do. But as far as like, I think it's apples and oranges from a person who, I'm talking about concepting, like if I'm thinking of painting a picture of, I'm going to use Madonna and Child, right? And I'm going to try Baroque treatments. Okay, I could see where I could use AI to do some lighting treatments, and then I go in and I use it as a sketchbook. It's just a faster digital sketchbook. Then I paint my picture. Do I have apprehensions about that? Yeah, because it can always be misused. One thing that I find disturbing with my students is a lot of them, they'll use Procreate and they'll use a tablet, and Procreate can compensate for a lot. But then, you've got the student, well, I've been drawing Genshin Impact characters in Procreate, and they look just like the ones in the game, and these are beautiful. And then you give them drawing one class, and you say, okay, I've got a vase here with a little chrome ball on it, and this styrofoam cube, and I want you to draw those, and they are lost. And you're saying, see, you've developed a skill in one area, but this is a skill, they are first cousins, but they're not the same thing. So the tactile part of the arts is part of the human condition, and it's part of who we are. I think it's natural to us to be tactile. We're tactile human beings. don't think that's ever gonna go away from art. I think some people really appreciate the tactile things too. They like to have that human, you know, it's handmade. I just was at the car show this last summer. This one guy had all these pieces on his car and he had handmade across it. I'm like, why the heck, if it doesn't matter that it was made by hand, then, but we're always gonna feel a certain, there's a guy named John Canady from the early 60s who was an art critic. If you've ever seen the movie Big Eyes, he's the bad guy critic in the movie Big Eyes. But Canady said, we feel as human beings when someone takes a flat surface and makes it look like a window to another world, that it's almost like supernatural, like magic. And I think that, I don't see AI making that go away, because I still see it now. If you've got a student that draws really well, it's an achievement. We consider it to be an accomplishment. So, you know, I'm not all in on it. I think it could be useful as a tool. The reason I teach it to my illustration students is they're gonna be either competing with it and getting beat, or they're going to learn to harness it, to use it as a tool to help them in their careers, because it's already difficult to be an illustrator. I mean, there aren't people, is anybody in here running around looking for an illustrator? You wanna pay them $100,000 a year? Cause I've got a couple that you can hire if you want to. It's very difficult to do that. And you know, it's worse when you got a machine that can, for undiscriminating people, there's another issue here. I don't want to go too far into this, but there's taste. There are human beings with taste who understand when something's an achievement. And when you're defining art, you brought up the word art and you said art has to be made by human beings. Well, you have to be careful, because you're establishing, you're involved in defining then, and set theory and all kinds of things that are involved in the definition of what a work of art is. And you can say, okay, a work of art must be created by a human being. But there's a lot of counter arguments to that. I'm not saying I agree with those arguments, but some of them are pretty convincing and they're pretty sound, okay? And so they're hard to overcome. And there's a big thing, I see this all the time, it drives me crazy. Can AI make art? You know, I'm like, you know, you can take my critical perspectives class and we can talk about what art is and how people approach defining art. There's the institutional theory, there's the honorific theory, there's the absolutist theory. There's 20 different theories about how to define art. And I don't think that matters really. If we want to say that AI, something AI generates is art, I don't care, you know, let that person say that. I would rather say it's like unto art, or it imitates art. That I think is probably more responsible. But the last thing I'm going to mention, because I'm going too long here, is I by no means see it, like I said before, authenticity is huge in the arts. The ability of human beings is very important in what most people conceive to be a work of art. They consider it to be honorific. In other words, a lot of people, when they think of art, they think of something that is an achievement or an accomplishment in some way. And you can have a list of ways. It could be aesthetic qualities, it could be intellectual stimulation, all those things. Those are human things. And the other thing is, human beings know how human beings feel, and when somebody expresses something in a certain way, it can kind of become contagious, and we can look at that expression and we can, God forbid, use the word catharsis. We can have a cathartic type reaction to it, even if it's not pity and fear, I get it. But, you know, not stimulated by pity and fear, but I do think there's that as well. So they're two different things. They're apples and oranges. But what I was saying is not a copy, but an imitation. It imitates a person talking to you. That's what I was thinking, John. But anyway, I'm rambling.
Yeah.
I give this a lot of thought.
Yeah, and you made good points. I do want to add from like the computer science perspective that especially large language models, code generation and art generation, that is very much data driven or information driven about what's already out there on either the internets or in private databases, et cetera. So like you mentioned, it imitates, doesn't create.
Right.
So just keep that in mind, that like, hey, yeah, there is a data barrier there, and yeah, we do still need people to create things and yeah, create new information for people to learn about, yeah.
It doesn't originate either, sorry.
I like your
Yeah.
question, because what I think it gets to, anyway, the way I think, is we're moving away from what is normal humanness, and we're starting to sort of like the non-humanness a little bit better. Some examples I have of that is children throughout our bioevolutionary heritage have never sat still, ever. Unless something was wrong with them, then they sat still. Well, then we invented schools where they have to sit on their butts for 8 and 9 hours a day, and if they don't do it, then we call them ADHD or conduct disorder or da-da-da-da-da. So that's moving away from our humanness. Even the way we look, we want to look a certain way now. We want synthetic things in our lips and other parts of our body. It's not human. So we're starting to kind of like that. We kind of prefer that non-humanness. And it even is in music. It is. I mean, you used to could tell somebody's voice because it was so rich and beautiful, and it wasn't perfect, but it was so beautiful and it hit you here. And I think we're moving away from that, and that's one of my, how I really think about this, is what are we gonna do when we've so prefer non-humanness? What does that look like? What kind of world is that?
I have a question kind of for Cornelius. So G.K. Chesterton says that if you're progressing or if you're trying to make progress, you have to have a point in which you're progressing to, otherwise you're just, you're just in motion, you're in flux, you're not moving towards anything. So what do you think AI is progressing towards? Is there a point, or is it just, do you think it's just developing to develop, or do you think that there is some point that it's progressing towards?
And correct me if I'm wrong here, Trent, but it seems to me that there's not really doesn't seem to be a clear point, at least from what I've researched. We seem to just be going towards, well, if there is a point, it's like who can create the most realistic AI that mimics, or like you said, imitates the human the best. That seems to be the only point that I can think of, really. Because you have AI, when you try to compare two, you might look for which one creates a more realistic picture of a dog, or whatever you tell it to make. And I think the same would go for art and music, or like painting and music. Which one makes the one that's hardest to distinguish from a man-made one? So I think if there is a point, it would have to be something along those lines.
Can I ask a kind of a follow-up question? I'm coming from a scientific perspective, kind of vaguely biomedical, where AI is being used a lot for, they're trying to develop diagnostics, in which case the point might be to move towards better use of this tool, so that doctors can do the interpreting and the tool can do, let's say, screening. I feel like you have done a great job, all four of you, discussing some of the risks and the advantages of using AI. I was curious, kind of going back to the title of tonight's panel, Ethical AI, what you think should be, from each of your different perspectives, maybe the most important ethical principle moving forward in trying to use this tool better. But that does kind of assume that we have, like off of Will's question, that we have a point that we're moving towards. So maybe, could you address what ethical considerations you think, from your own perspectives, would be most important to keep in mind as we consider maybe what point are we trying to move towards with this tool?
Yeah, that's a really deep and interesting question. From kind of, I think the cybersecurity side of things, kind of the ethics of like implementing AI technology into your environment is, how will that impact the overall security and safety of your infrastructure? And yeah, I mean, there's a lot of smarter people out there than me that are talking about that, and yeah, there's like NIST, National Institute of Standards of Technology, that has started to develop some kind of guiding frameworks or ideology when talking in the sense of cybersecurity and implementing it in that sense. I'm not for sure kind of in the general computer science sense at this time. That'd be something that I'd have to think about and ponder more.
Maybe I can answer your earlier question with this as well, Candace, about should we give it out to people. I think since the tool has the tendency to keep people in the cave, maybe we should be careful who we hand it out to. You shouldn't just give it to little kids who aren't going to know any better how to use it properly. And I think the same would go for like in the medical field. We need to, I guess, keep in mind who has these tools and what possible uses can they have for them. Are they going to use them for malicious reasons or not? And whether or not they're used for those reasons is going to depend on the person who has the tool. So
Yeah, the actor and whether or not the actor is malicious or not, which
Right.
does also apply to, again, back to cybersecurity, which, hey, yeah, especially in like the medical field. I mean, there was talks at Nebraska Medicine just generally and speculatively about, oh, okay, so if we do like implement AI technology into our like actual clinical environment, what ramifications would that be if our clinical environment got compromised? What would the bad actors get from that technology, or what would it be able to extract? And with cybersecurity, I mean, and especially in the medical side of things, it's very much like data. What data is exposed? What data does the AI technology expose that a bad actor can extract out, and whether or not, does that contain HIPAA information on patients? Is there any patient identifiable information in that data? And then it's like, okay, yeah, how do we secure our clinical environment in such a way that we can just generally, keep the patients that we're caring for safe. I mean and just talking about the like the clinical environment, that also delves into like biomedical security stuff, which is a lot more on like the lower level of it when you're talking about programming, and it has a lot more lower level vulnerabilities that people just generally don't think about. And that's also kind of why I mentioned that like AI technology isn't the only thing in our technological stack. There are other things that we need to look at and address in order to like overall keep our environments secure.
I love your question. I think though, when we're thinking about this question, when it comes to medical, this could have great advances in the medical field. And it absolutely could. Except I think what I know our medical model in this country is the body medical model. Everything stems from the body. The more Eastern model is the body, mind, spirit model. And there's actually published research that's showing with things like cancer, I'm just talking about headaches, PTSD, cancer, type 2 diabetes, I mean, I could go on and on, prayer, contemplation. There's this body, mind, spirit thing going on in this Eastern model that nobody in the American model is even looking at. How could a bot have any sense of deep contemplation and deep communion with the spiritual world, or what I choose to call God? And what's the point? So, and my other question would be, what would be the risks? Because every single time this body medical model comes up with a new way of doing things, there's always a risk to it. And then you have to weigh the risks and the benefits. And I think that's so critically important, but my most important thing I thought when you said that, I love the question, and I think it could be very, very useful, but I don't even think we understand how the body, mind, spirit is working in tandem. I don't. Or then we could understand how can deep contemplative prayer stop your cancer? Then we could answer that question, but we can't. That's how I think about that.
I just hope there's always prudent consideration of potential consequences when moving forward with any technology, and that I'm hopeful that some people with authority that have some control over this will be level-headed. If I had my way, they contemplate Aristotle's ethics. But we don't even teach that to nursing. We don't, our nursing students here don't take ethics from the philosophy professors, and I have an issue with that. But I'd like to see, I think it's important that they're grounded philosophically in ethics, the people who control the technology, because, I don't think I worked on a research project, by the way. I actually started the research project about 20 years ago. Just as I won't make this too long, but my daughter had septicemia and meningitis. It was about 18 years ago. When she was born, about a few days afterwards, and it had to do with reflux in her kidneys. And I was sitting in the hospital, and I was looking at all these ticker tapes that these nurses would come in, wonderful peds nurses at Good Sam at that time. The youngest one had 17 years of experience, and they were incredible. And for parents sitting there with your daughter, and she's had 2 spinal taps before she's 2 weeks old. They made me trust them because they were that good. But I sitting there looking at all this, and I thought, I asked one of the nurses, how many channels of information do you have here? And it's like, you got this machine with this CRT thing showing this and the other. So it prompted an experiment with a professor at UT Austin and a radiologist in an oncology clinic in Midland, Texas. And we were trying to do diagnostics where we'd do a 3-dimensional thing that was time versus all these other channels, temperature, blood pressure, et cetera, all the vital signs that we could get, and we could rotate that thing and you could look at it. There were very few doctors that we worked with that could do decent diagnosis with it. It was too complicated. They were used to the little strings of numbers, right? Okay. Well, I got out of it because I got into something else, and they're still pursuing it at UT. And what they found out, AI is orders of magnitude better at diagnosing with it. I don't know how far the project's gonna go, but I worry about it because their biggest problem is getting data. They need long streams of data. So if you're in the hospital with an acute appendicitis that's burst, you might be there for a week, and so they can have a somewhat disrupted stream of data, and that works okay, but they need lots and lots. It's just like the generative discriminative thing on image generation. You gotta have a lot of data for the discriminator, right? And so that's been an interesting thing, and every once in a while I kind of check in on it. But there's also this other thing. Doctors are hesitant, the medical community's been hesitant to want to adopt it. That's what I was getting at, essentially. Because they're not used to it. That's not the way they diagnose. Sitting there looking at some VR thing, turning it, but the AI loves it. So, so far it could be useful that way. Who knows, maybe someday you'll see it on TV and I can say, that started at UNK.
Yeah, also on that, some of the stuff that you were talking about kind of reminded me of Dr. Ian Malcolm from the Jurassic Park books.
Yeah.
Just, the saying, life finds a way, and then if you kind of read into the second book, there's a quote from him about as the complexity of the system increases, the more likely there is to be chaos introduced into that system if you're trying to build an orderly system.
We pretend like we know so much about the brain, sorry.
Yeah.
We do. And if you shut your eyes and see your mother's face, everybody do it. Shut your eyes and see your mother's face. Okay, everybody did that? There's not a neurologist on the planet that can tell you how you just did that. If something's so sophomoric can't be explained, there's just this vastness of us, and we don't understand it, and we want to, and we pretend, particularly as academics, that we understand it all, and the fact is we don't understand much.
I guess I just have a question sort of about the ethics of it. Do you see AI or the use of AI being successful for the people who want to use it unethically, or do you see that now? Will you see that in the future, or are you seeing it?
Absolutely now in my field, yeah. I mean, there's always been unethical people and there always will be, but boy, is this easy to cheat. I mean, it is. It just is.
There's a problem with scholarly integrity in universities all over the world right now.
Serious.
There's a lot of bogus research. There's, you know, it's huge.
Yeah, sorry. I guess I'm also kind of thinking back to what I mentioned about how you use large language models and how you co-author things, and I don't know. It's pretty easy when you're talking about code to specify what section of code you co-authored with code generation tooling. I'm not really for sure how you could do that with if you're using AI to help you learn about a subject matter and build out a paper with that. There's probably a way to do that, but I'm probably not the best person to talk about that.
So I'm thinking about the paper that I just published, so you have your literature review, and then you have your data analysis, and then you have your discussion, and you have future ramifications. So in that paper, what will it look like? Like data analysis performed by AI, or conceptually, theoretically, who started this? Because all hypotheses are generated by theory, and all theory leads to scientific inquiry. So it's kind of mind-boggling to me how it would even be written, because that's my research. That's mine. And I think maybe AI could do a good lit review maybe, but I'm not even sure about that. I'm not sure about that.
Do you see the person who produces a movie by themselves? Do you see that movie being successful if it's produced all with AI? Or does it lack the heart, I guess, of what would happen on a TV?
I think it's more for the benefit of the person who wants to make their own movie. Whether or not the movie comes out, you know, that's got a lot to do with a lot of factors, and AI might be able to imitate its way into some of those things. And I think about that. Can AI generate, you know, a script that'll make you cry because it's good enough at imitating that it can, you know, pick up on these cues like some human beings can. What I think honestly, yeah, like Wes Anderson movies. Okay, that's truly innovative, and that didn't come from a bunch of data fed in of other movies. See what I mean? I mean the flatness, the color palettes, all that. The way he's got Bill Murray acting in the movie, like the Grand Budapest Hotel or something like that. That's not something. I think that kind of development. I can't see how any AI algorithm could do that. But then here's an interesting thing, if I could just say one other thing. Our students in design can recognize Photoshop filters and things like that instantly, and I'm sure a lot of you can do that too. Well, they can also do that with AI image generation. It doesn't take much with my illustration students to see the difference between a DALL-E 3 image and a Midjourney image, which is another software package, or say Stable Diffusion, which is a free one. Because when they generate enough, I tell them, I say, you gotta generate 500 images over the weekend. Okay, that would be one assignment. And they get so good at seeing it that they can say, oh, that was done in Stable Diffusion. That was done in DALL-E. And so are we gonna get to a place to where we're so tired of it? Like the super saturated colors in a lot of AI right now, I'm sick of them. I mean, I see some, oh, look, it's Willy Wonka, and everything's super saturated like a video game. And I think you're gonna see the circular thing where if we keep, let's say this happens. So, let's say they're still training by, of course that's legally not as easy as it used to be. They just ripped off a bunch of images initially from artists, and then they just trained their in image. Can I step on your territory for a second with the way an image generator works?
Okay, yeah.
You have a generator algorithm and you have a discriminator algorithm.
Right.
And they're involved with what used to be called GANs, generative adversarial networks, where the one generates an image, which they call a sample, and then that image is discriminated with the discriminator. It's got a massive body of data of images. So let's say I'm gonna do a cabin in the woods, right? And I'm the generator. I generate an image of a cabin in the woods, and the discriminator compares it to all of these other images of cabins in the wood, and then we'll just say reports back as to the authenticity of it. I can tell it's not real, it says. Well, okay, so the generator has to change the way that it generates the image, and then it spits out another sample, and then the discriminator looks at that sample, does its comparisons, and whatever magic, that's all magic to me. It does, and then
Sorry,
you know,
to kind of jump in there, I mean.
Yeah, please do.
There's, I don't know who to attribute the quote to. It just, there was a quote that I kind of remember that like, any sufficiently advanced technology can be considered magic.
Yeah.
So computer scientists, to a degree, can be seen as modern day magicians. So yeah, sorry, that was a little tangential thing.
What's ironic is that's how we do things in art. Student does a drawing, we do a critique, we say this works, this probably needs some adjustment right here, right? They go back, they fix it. And so we're the discriminators, they're the generator. But a computer can do that so fast that it can quickly come to a solution that's believable, whereas a student, years, 10,000 hours, right? And so, anyway, I don't know if I even answered your question. I got off on one of them tangents.
This might be more of a question for Dr. Stolzer and Professor Hartman, but so in the university system, we're taught, or I guess just, I feel like where our majors are taking off towards, like mine is, I'm going in for education. We're kind of being led to the point where it's very stressful to be a teacher. So here's AI and it can help you make your like breakdowns of the day. That wasn't always how it used to be. Is that kind of destroying the vocation of a teacher? Is it making it easier to be a teacher, and that's why we're getting worse teachers that aren't concerned about the trifecta of the person, the body, soul, and spirit, or whichever free word, but like, I don't know, it didn't used to always be that way. So how is it teachers are more stressed out now using more AI when it's supposed to be helping them? Like, is it just the wrong people are going into teaching, or like?
Theoretically, we've forgotten the great Lev Vygotsky. Vygotsky clearly says that all authentic learning involves relationship. You have to know that student. And my student, did they all leave? No, they didn't. They know that I'm a Vygotskian in my heart. That's how you teach. That's how you connect. It's our relationships as human beings, understanding that person socially, psychologically, emotionally, connection. And how I'm gonna help you is very different than I'm gonna help you. No AI can ever do that. So we're forgetting the most important core of us. I was a Montessori teacher for, 4 years, and I was a kindergarten teacher, so I went through all of this. And It's just your innate love for kids, and Vygotsky had it right. It is about relationships. That is what it is. Now, of course, we could teach rote learning where you can just spit stuff out, and you can't remember anything. But it's our humanness again, that relationship, that connectedness, things we can't even describe. So I'm not saying it's bad teachers. I'm saying they're being led down a wrong path. And so what does any great explorer tell you? That if you're down the wrong path, you have to go back to the starting point. And the starting point is relationships. The starting point is understanding developmental processes with humans, neurologically, psychologically, hormonally, getting away from this. I might make you mad with saying this, but it's just my research for the last 35 years. Boys and girls are very, very different. We must continue teaching that. Are there outliers? There certainly are, and they must be respected, and they must be acknowledged. But the fact is, boys and girls are really, really different, and when we quit teaching our teachers this, then we're starting this generic thing that you're talking about with AI, and it never works. It never works because it takes away relationships, and it takes away esoteric understanding.
So then is having AI as a tool to creating those lessons for children, are they destroying our education system?
Absolutely, I believe they are. Absolutely, and they're not only destroying education, they're destroying us on every single level. And I mean, if you want to say, what facts do you have? All you gotta do is look. When I was a little girl, we were number 1 and number 2 in every single subject on this planet. Nobody could touch us. Today we're 39th in reading, we're 65th in mathematical reasoning. We're just going like this and this. We keep cutting recess, we keep cutting PE, we keep cutting art, we keep cutting all of this. And we're expecting better results, and what's happening is we're going like this. We have to go back to square one. We know how to do this right. We know what our children need, and we're not doing it. We know that attachment processes from birth are the most critical thing we could ever do for our children. We won't even pay maternal leave. We won't. We're the richest, most educated country that's ever been on the planet, and we still won't do it because we refuse as human beings to say how important that primary attachment is for those first 4 or 5 years of life.
I'm gonna play devil's advocate a
Go
little bit
for
here.
it.
Again, with the context that AI is a tool, and tools can be helpful on an individual by individual basis for learning. In my experience, I do see AI as a tool for learning more suited for older, like our age group, like 20 to 40-year-olds. I'll just state that age range. I mean, we can debate that, but like, well, the people who are mature enough to understand kind of the background of AI and realize that it can be helpful in certain cases with certain individuals. But yeah, I mean, I don't really see it as helpful kind of in the in like the childhood education kind of scenario. But I do think AI can be a tool that is useful for learning, just not necessarily childhood development learning.
One of the greatest things COVID did for us, and I'm on this task force right now, is, when you say COVID, remember we all went online. It nearly killed me dead. I mean, it nearly killed me dead. What we know now for a fact, it's not conjecture, it's not theoretical, it's a fact. When we're learning from these screens, we don't retain it. We're simply, the data's out. You can't argue anymore. It's out. They weren't retaining it. Why? Let's go right back to Vygotsky, that relationship thing, that humanness thing, it's all gone. And we can't even explain what happened to us. But we know that we're not retaining it. So, I don't know about you, but I think we have to take a look at what we're doing, and especially where our children are concerned. We have to ask really, really important questions. Is this really the route we think is best for them developmentally? Or can we do better?
for an educator, there's a great book called The Smartest Kids in the World and How They Got That Way. Have you read that book? Yeah. It's South Korean, Scandinavian schools and how they see things differently. And there's one quote I remember, and it could be from there was a show, the guy who did Super Size Me did shows on this, and he asked I think it was Norway, they only have a couple of accrediting schools for teachers, and they said, what's the difference between the way you teach here and the way they do in the United States? And his response was, we trust our teachers. And if you're gonna like teaching, you're gonna need that. I always tell people that are prospective teachers, I hope you end up with a good principal. That's a big deal. What I get is the call, 10 years down the road, I can't even remember why I am teaching art. I say, well, are you doing art? Well, no, not really. You're not taking the time to do any of your own art, so you're not an agent of the subject matter anymore, which is super important. But there's a lot of things you gotta do as an educator. You know, you have to learn to get the vicarious. I get vicarious, what I would call them vicarious warm fuzzies from my students when they do really good work. And by the way, success is the best motivation. Don't let anybody tell you anything else. Nothing. If I show them the drawings on the wall that the students did the semester before and their jaws hit the floor, and I say, you can draw like that, you won't hear a noise for 2 hours during that class when they're in there, because they're like, I can draw like that, you know.
And I love how he said, trust teachers, trust teachers. I teach child and adolescent development. I've taught it for 35 years. All my research is centered around there. Our teachers right now are not required to take child and adolescent development. They're required to take stats, art history, but not child development. So how can you trust somebody when they don't have any education in the subject matter? That scares me. And it's all political. It's all political. Now, we have to take assessment classes. We have to take assessment classes.
Yeah.
So you can watch for this. Are you moving too much? Are you not talking too much? Do you have this? Do you have this? Ask any teacher over 60, how many developmental classes did you have? And that's the crux of our education. And today, none. I didn't have any.
But they've got TE 100.
Yeah, they do. So philosophically, I want to trust teachers because I was one for a very long, well, I still am in a different realm. But we have to be educating them. We have to be educating them about child development. Really, really important. How can you write a curriculum if you don't understand the difference from a pre-operational thinker to a concrete operational thinker? I mean, it's silly, actually.
If you ask Tom Martin, why is it that you're still teaching people? He said, I can't help myself. I can't help myself. That's a teacher. That's somebody who really cares about what they do. If they're still teaching and they're not getting paid for it, and they're meeting you at Baristas and going over Chesterton for free, for nothing, can't help myself. Yeah, I gotta get that Rodney Dangerfield inflection. I'll tell you what.
Well, thank you. Keep up on the Facebook page and the group me, and we'll let you know what's happening next semester. But Merry Christmas, and we will continue the conversation at Thunder.